2016 local elections, you may remember them, they were just 5 years ago, the ANC claimed the eThekwini municipality with 56 of the seats. Opposition parties did not have enough seats to form a coalition to oppose the party. What's changed then is the number of council seats has increased from 205 to 219. Will this make a difference? We're joined by our local government election expert, Pascal Moloi. Pascal, thanks for coming in again. We're going to miss you when all of this is done.
Thank you. Thank you.
eThekwini's been safe for the ANC for really quite a long time. Is it coming under any threat in any major way? There are divisions in eThekwini. Zandile Gumede was, I would say, step aside, step down. I don't know which is correct. Those are both important phrases. She had to move to the provincial legislature. Is that going to have an impact?
I think so. I mean, if you look at the trends from, well, I went back to 2011 just to check and trace how the parties have been doing in eThekwini. And the ANC came in at 61%, and the DA has been hovering below the 30% mark right throughout all the past elections up to 2019. The EFF obviously was not there in 2011, but there was the minority party. There were smaller parties that disappeared. They are there, but they are not gaining enough seats. And of course the Inkatha Freedom Party, which again has been struggling to go beyond 5% throughout all these elections. Come 2016, what was interesting also is that the ANC upped its vote in 2014. So they were sitting at 65. But since 2014, there's been just one way down, and now they're sitting at, I think in the 2019 national elections, they were sitting at about 55, 56%. So there are trends and there are indications that although they might still retain eThekwini, but they're losing their grip for the reasons that you're raising. I think it's mostly party internal conflicts and politics, and I mean the former MM is also staying in trial against, I mean, alongside the former mayor. I'm sure that would have an impact, but to what extent, I'm not too sure.
What we haven't seen, because you see it in some places, you see it in Northwest, you see it in Northern Cape, we're looking at today, is that people who are dissatisfied with the ANC create independent candidates, they go it alone. We don't see that in eThekwini, despite the popularity of some of the figures there. I mean, Zandile Gumede has a power base.
Yeah. No, but there's the independent, African Independent Party that has been rearing its head. The AIC there. But yes, there has been the African Independent Party, which I want to believe that it's made up of independent candidates. 4% there, and I think at some point they were hovering around 3%. So yes, I think there is a much greater possibility now that the independents might come in and make a dent onto the ANC vote especially, but also the DA is not also promising with the current posters around Phoenix and those places. I think it's not doing itself a great service either.
Well, we need to talk about Phoenix. I mean, part of eThekwini, the posters, I want to talk about the posters, but the posters came after the violence. And I would imagine for people in that whole Phoenix area, this election may well be a little bit about what happened, where we really saw, and I mean there's no way to tiptoe around this, we really saw what appeared to be black South Africans and Indian South Africans in conflict with each other. There are lots of different terms that are used to describe what happened. But how big an issue is the violence? I mean, the posters came after the violence, but you would think the violence might almost hang over this election.
Well, it will. It will. I think the proximity of the violence to, how do I put it, to the fact that it's a KZN issue, that has been President Zuma's stronghold. I'm not in any way suggesting that he is behind the violence, but the sentiment, I think it's something that we have to talk about, that we cannot shy away from, that there is that propensity, if I can call it that, for violent protest, and we saw it in Phoenix. But I think it's something that has been there, that whether you're talking about Phoenix or you're talking about Maritzburg or you're talking about other centers around KZN, the propensity for violence has always been a threat.
Do you think that fear is one of the factors that's going to drive voter behavior in some communities there? I mean, people are going to be very scared about what happened in Phoenix. They're going to be scared about what's happened in the past before that.
Well, I hope it's been identified as one of the hotspots with the announcement that was made yesterday, and maybe that might allay fears a bit. It was interesting to listen to the IEC CEO talking about the long weekend factor. That's another factor, I think, to take into account, that people might tend to look at this long weekend and not turn out. And the voter turnout is going to have a huge bearing on the big parties, and especially the ANC.
One of the really interesting things, and to pick up on what you said the IFP got 5% in eThekwini, but it's in government in some municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal. It really shows you the stark differences in how big KZN actually is politically, that it can be in government, it can be in administration in some councils, and only 5% in the major centre.
No, even then, I mean, 5% they got for the 2019 and 2014 provincial elections. In eThekwini, they really hover between 3 and 4%. It has never gone over 4%. And it's startling that in that center, you would expect the IFP to do better. Maybe there is an urban focus that the IFP concentrates on. I mean, in your villages, in your Nongomas and those areas. So maybe there could be. And there's a very strong correlation between what is Zulu culture and what's the IFP. And in an urban area, I don't think that plays a big role. Hence, perhaps we see the IFP not performing as well as in the villages.
So for the Democratic Alliance, you made the point that they can't seem to get above 30%. And the posters probably, at the very least, I mean, this would be the best case scenario, show divisions in the Democratic Alliance in eThekwini, because one leader put it up and then was basically overruled and had to take it down and apologize, even though it seems that, the leader of the party, John Steenhuisen, I mean, we know first defended them to our reporter. Just the fact that it is divided, it almost didn't know what to do, that's bad news, surely. And that's on best case scenario.
No, it is bad news. I think it is bad news for the DA. I don't think they'll show much better than they did in the last election, if not maybe drop a percentage or more. I doubt if they can do better than 24%.
And then, I mean, back to the IFP, you just don't see them making gains. I find this so interesting because, of where KZN is, but also because of the opportunity that maybe is open to them. They're one party that hasn't really suffered big claims of corruption while being in administration elsewhere. Perhaps there's a sense of, the IFP has a long history. You would think that maybe the door is open for them to make gains, and yet that doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, also what would be interesting is to see the IFP performing in an election in the post-Mangosuthu era. I think that can have...
if it is.
Well, if it is, but I think the perception out there is that Mtwana is not there, and maybe we can do better under different leadership. And I'm not sure. I haven't, unfortunately, studied their manifesto. But if there's one time for the IFP to make a move into eThekwini, this will be their best test ever. If it remains at 4%, then really there's something wrong with the IFP in eThekwini.
And then, like other places, I would imagine this is a good moment for the EFF. You would expect them to increase their support when you consider the target market that they're campaigning for, when you consider, just the sense of anger on the ground. This would be their moment in eThekwini like it is in other places.
Yes, I mean, they came in at 3% in 2014. And in 2016, I think they were sitting at 11%. They have 8 seats in the current dispensation, and with IFP sitting with 10 seats. What was also interesting was the by-election. Maybe I should have mentioned this point when we talked about the DA. It lost a by-election to the ANC in 2018, and brought their seats down to 60 and increased the ANC's seats, I think, to about 127 out of the 219 seats that we have in that council. So yes, I think the EFF you ignore at your own peril. The 11% that they should, well, those are national elections, but it's an indication of the EFF sentiment within eThekwini.
I mean, on balance, what we have at the moment. You expect the ANC to stay in charge in eThekwini. It's the changes beneath that are actually going to give us a signal about what's going to happen in eThekwini in the future. Would that be the right way to sum it all up?
Yeah, I think so. If it goes below 50%, there'll be there's a history between the ANC and IFP in coalitions elsewhere, etc. I think there's still a chance that they can get into a sound coalition there in eThekwini as well, as they did in Johannesburg and other areas. But yes, my sense is that the interesting points to watch is who emerge as a coalition of oppositions. I suspect maybe there might be an opposition coalition emerging in these elections, not just in eThekwini but in other areas as well.
Pascal Moloi, thanks very much indeed. So much to talk about. I feel we're just warming up when it comes to eThekwini because there's so much to say.